government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon Howse.
And welcome to the broadcast on this August 25th, 2025. All right, this might be a little controversial. I don't know. I don't know how to really feel about it. I just watched President Trump signing an executive order to crack down on flag burning the American flag. Now, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't agree with it. I find it disgusting. But I don't know. I really need your help today. Is it something that should get you thrown into prison for a year for? Because that's what President Trump's talking about. Now, again, don't get me wrong. Don't hear what you want to hear. Hear what I said. I don't like it. I don't like burning the American flag. I don't like when I see people doing it. I wish people wouldn't do it. I don't think people should do it. But I don't know. I'm very cautious when it comes to more federal laws to prosecute people when it comes to the issue of the First Amendment. What's the old saying? I don't have to agree with your statement to defend your right to say it. Now, obviously, you can't make terroristic threats. You can't just say whatever you want. You can't threaten someone, a terroristic threat. There are limits on the First Amendment. Is this one of them? Is this one of those things that should be a limit on the First Amendment? That yes, if you burn a flag, the American flag, and particularly if it's done to incite a protest, as you're going to hear President Trump talk about, you can go to jail for a year. Or do we say, look, we find it disgusting, reprehensible, wrong, unpatriotic, anti-American, but we have to be very careful to not start ourselves down a slippery slope. Because what if the next thing is you burn the Quran in a public protest, you're going to jail for a year? Oh, wait a minute. Now, some of you say, oh, look, I have no problem with someone going to jail for a year that burns the American flag. What if I say, well, what if you burn the Quran in a public demonstration? Or very good point, Logan. What if you burn the gay pride flag in a protest? So the point here is, folks, we have to be very careful. Now, I think the courts have already ruled on flag burning and First Amendment, but apparently this executive order is putting in some new stipulations that they think will get them around that. I appreciate a lot of what President Trump is doing. I appreciate a lot of what he has accomplished. Planned Parenthood is shutting down left and right from what I read. This is all good. There's a lot of great things he's doing. But every now and then I look at something and go, what? By the way, in my Worldview report tonight, apparently the Trump administration is doing an about face when it comes to the IRS. You remember Biden hiring like 80,000 IRS agents. And President Trump at one point talked about even doing away with the IRS, right? Well, apparently things are changing very quickly. If I can find the report tonight real quick. Coming from The Hill. Two sources have been briefed on the matter, say that the IRS is what they were planning to lay off people, bring the workforce below 60,000. And apparently now they're going to be bringing a lot of these people back and restaffing and growing the IRS. Now, I don't think I've mentioned it here on radio, but you guys remember I had my issue of the IRS sending us a bill for $43,000, I think it was initially, because we dared to pay our payroll taxes with a check when their system was down during the crazy COVID years and nobody was answering the phones at the IRS. And their system was down, so we couldn't pay our payroll tax online. So my accountant said, overnight the check. So we overnighted the check. They came back and sent us a letter saying, well, because you did that, we're penalizing you $43,000. We appealed it, and they sent us a letter abating it. 2 years later, they sent us a letter saying, we now want over $48,000. And it got to $49,000, over $49,000. We were like, wait a minute, you guys abated this 2 years ago. Here's the letter. And then they abated it again with another gal that was questioning something on our taxes. In the process, sent a letter saying, you're all fine for that tax year. Everything, no penalties, no fines, no nothing. You're good to go. 2 letters of abatement. And we're like, here's our 2 letters of abatement. You guys keep changing your mind. You can't do that. That's illegal, actually, what you're doing. Went to a nice, as you guys remember, a nice auditor lady in Milwaukee. Turned out she was in Milwaukee. And she's like, this is crazy, Mr. Howse. And she put together the file, appealed it to her boss and said, I think this should be done and over. You can't abate something and then change your mind. Sorry. She agreed with that. But her supervisor said no. So we had to pay over $49,000 on July 3rd. Happy 4th of July. Freedom. No, I'm sorry. You don't have freedom, America. You've just been led to believe you have freedom. And so I don't think I've mentioned this part on the radio. So I have the phone number of the guy that was the U.S. congressman for Joplin, Missouri, Billy Long. So he became the IRS commissioner. So I just texted the IRS commissioner. I said, hey, Mr. Long, here's who I am. We have some mutual friends. Here's who some of them are. And this is ridiculous. And I told him the story, sent him the press release by text. And to my surprise, the IRS commissioner texted me back, said, you'll be getting a phone call. And we're going to get someone on this and take a look at this. And over the course of a couple weeks, IRS commissioner and I were texting back. And we got a phone call. But hey, as the IRS goes, the lady left no number to get a hold of her at. And when you call the 800 number, they say, I'm sorry, we're overloaded right now. We can't take your call. We're like, we're trying to get a hold of this lady. We know her name. We know her IRS employee number. She gave us that. But she didn't give us the number right to her desk. So we're having a hard time even getting the IRS to answer the phone still. Well, in the meantime, I told that to the IRS commissioner, and he was going to, get somebody else on it. And voila, apparently he got reassigned from the IRS. Now he's the ambassador to Iceland. All right. We just lost a lifeline. So anyway, the acting IRS director is now the Treasury Secretary. And I don't know why Mr. Long was let go at the IRS. But I have to wonder if it's because the Trump administration apparently is going to increase the number of IRS agents, grow the IRS in a 180. That's what the Hill's reporting. I don't know. But this agency is so unorganized. Remember, we got reports they were burning by several CPAs and a whistleblower inside the IRS here in the Mid-South, burning trailer loads, shredding trailer loads of tax returns and checks when they got behind during COVID. Came back, oh, that's too much, just shred it. And people are having to refile their taxes and rewrite checks. And I know CPAs around town verifying that story. Yeah. My clients filed their tax return, wrote the check, had to do it all over again. Because the IRS too lazy to process the paperwork. Oh yeah, let's expand this wonderful agency, the IRS. No, I'm sorry. That shouldn't happen. But apparently it is. And while we're talking about such happy things, I have an article over at worldviewreport.com today. And I'm going to go to that clip by President Trump. Worldviewreport.com. Talking about the fact that here's what a top Wall Street analyst warns. And that would be Edward Dowd, who I've interviewed many, many times, including about a month ago. Top Wall Street analyst Ed Dowd warns that a global deep recession will be triggered immediately to usher in digital cash. Digital cash. He's a former portfolio manager, founding partner at, Finance Technologies. Oversaw a $14 billion growth equity fund at BlackRock. He co-authored Cause Unknown, subtitled The Epidemic of Sudden Deaths in 2021 and 2022. And he warned in this interview that a deep recession is likely to strike in the next 6 to 12 months, driven by a collapsing housing market, stock crashes, job losses, and waves of bank failures. At the core of his analysis is the consolidation of the banking system. Dowd predicts that as smaller banks fail, the industry will consolidate into fewer, much larger institutions. A necessary precursor, he argues, for the introduction of central bank digital currencies. A system of CBDCs or digital cash would give government and central banks unprecedented control over personal financial transactions and behavior. He explained that while the US dollar remains the cleanest shirt in a dirty laundry, its role as the global reserve currency is under strain. $17 trillion in denominated debt abroad, countries cannot easily escape dependence on the greenback without triggering deflationary collapse. Still, he sees cycles aligning with what he calls the bursting of the largest economic bubble in history. Well, I'm so glad I tuned in to Brannon today. He's just so full of good news. Happy Monday. Well, I just am here to report the news and do my part. But I wouldn't blame you if you're a little downcast over everything I'm saying. But I think it all fits in with Bible prophecy. I want to tell you what he had to say on the other side, because I've been telling you guys, now look, don't get mad at me. It's my job just to report the news and give analysis and information. I've been telling you, as much as I appreciate what Donald Trump's doing in some areas, I'm afraid with the Genius Act and a lot of this other stuff and the tech bros, we're going to look back and say, yeah, it was his administration that ushered a lot of this in. Now, is he the cause of it? No. They built all this debt up over since 1913, and voila, it gets dumped in his lap. But how many of you remember when we said that they were going to do that to him? We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. Taught last night our 47th lesson together on the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 20. Revelation chapter 20 is a great lesson. If I do say so myself, but not because, no, that sounds terrible, not because I taught it. It was a great lesson because I was studying the Bible. I was studying the Millennial Kingdom, and I'm excited about the Millennial Kingdom. And my friends, what impressed me so much with my study on Revelation 20 is how vital what we're doing now is to the positions that we'll be holding during that Millennial Kingdom. I liked some of the things that Henry Morris wrote. I shared some of them on Friday. And by the way, that broadcast has gotten a lot of traction out there on social media, hasn't it? Logan, a lot of traction. Some of the prophecy groups out there are retweeting it and reposting it. So apparently a lot of people like me are pretty excited about the Millennial Kingdom, which, by the way, is not made up. The Millennial Kingdom is not something that was made up. Remember when Tucker Carlson had that lady, quote, lady, end quote, on? What was her name? Mother Akapia Stephanopoulos? She said the Millennial Kingdom's made up. Really? I don't think you know the Bible, lady. It's not made up. It's all throughout the Old Testament. And last night I shared and read some from the Old Testament about the Millennial Kingdom and what it's going to be like. And then I showed a long list of scriptures that I didn't have time to read, but I encourage those watching to take a screenshot of it and go and read them. The Old Testament is full. It is full of predictions, prophecy about the Millennial Kingdom. And in fact, I have on another computer here. Let me read to you. I don't have this one plugged in, but let me just read this to you. Grant Jeffrey, then I'll go back to our topic. Don't you love how I do these rabbit trails, but always seem to come back to where we're at? Grant Jeffrey, by the way, the point I'm making here is this is all available now. I'm pretty sure it's all available now at lastdaysstudy.com. Lesson 1 through now 47. Lastdaysstudy.com. All of them are there. We opened them all up. Those were behind the paywall, but we opened them all up because I think in this day and time, we need as many people as possible to understand these things. And apparently a lot of people are very interested in this. I had about an hour conversation last week with Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen, the lead pollster at Rasmussen. He'll be with us at our upcoming national conference, Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. I think he comes from a denomination that doesn't traditionally probably teach a lot about Bible prophecy. And if they do, they're certainly not teaching dispensationalism. But he has taken a real interest in the issue of Bible prophecy and where this is all going. So we had a lengthy conversation, and he's like, this is so fascinating. Where can I watch those 46 classes at the time? I said, well, I'm doing number 47 Sunday night. And so I sent him the link. He said, I'm going to start listening to these. Because the things that you're talking about, I think, fall right in line with what I see happening. I said, yes, it's remarkable, isn't it? And yet the post-millennialist, the all-millennialist will tell us how, no, none of this is happening. You know, don't you know it all happened? The rapture already happened back in AD 70 when Rome sacked Jerusalem. No, the millennial kingdom, it's in our hearts and our minds as Christ rules in our hearts and minds. No, there's no tribulation. Tribulation is whenever you run into hard times, tough times. There's no millennial kingdom. That's just Christ ruling in our hearts and minds. Others will say, oh, yeah, there's a millennial kingdom, like your post-millennial people. Yeah, there's a millennial kingdom. Now, there's different subsets in here. I'm not going to give you every subset. But the post-millennial guys are like, and gals are like, well, we got to bring in the kingdom. We got to build the kingdom. We got to take the 7 mountain mandate, media, education, government, Christianize the world. Get a great harvest. I'm all for evangelism, folks. But I'm not doing evangelism and preaching the gospel so that I can Christianize the world because I have to in order for Christ to return. That the Lord's sitting in heaven waiting on us to get our act together. And folks, I have quotes by people that are well known in that movement teaching that, documented. It's in my book, Religious Trojan Horse, 2011. Very man-centered, you think about it. The Lord's sitting around waiting for us to get our act together. As though somehow we could moralize the world, that Christians could take over. Look, most Christians can't balance their checkbook. You think they can run the world? Most Christians that I talk to don't understand 90% of what's happening, and certainly not from the Bible. The Christians can't even keep their own church denominations on the straight and narrow. They're into social justice, Marxism mixed with Christianity. They're into playing kumbaya and interfaith dialogue with the jihadis. They're hiding out sex offenders. They're letting sex offenders get out of jail and go right back into the pulpit. They can't even manage their own denominations, but somehow the Christians, they're going to take over the world. Oh, well, that would scare me to death. To see some of these, quote, Christians ruling. Can you imagine? Yeah. You really want to see Cindy Jacobs, who thinks she's reversing hysterectomies over the television, in a position of powerful government? No. Are any of these other apostles and prophets? Well, that's what they teach. But these manifested sons of God, they'll be sinless, raising the dead, and the political leaders of the world will be leaning on them. Well, sorry, wrongo. But they think that they can, because there are no prophets and apostles today. And I won't get into that, but I lay that out clearly from the Bible. But they think they're going to Christianize the world, take over the power centers, and then set an environment that, well, Christ can come back. Well, isn't that interesting? Because the whole millennium, Christ is ruling in Jerusalem. He's ruling with an iron rod. And the children that are being born during that millennial kingdom have got to make a choice. Their parents, or maybe parent, was a believer. Let's say the mom, maybe her husband died. She's a Christian. What we would call actually tribulation saints, to be accurate, during the tribulation period. The church is gone. She's a tribulation saint. She physically survives the millennium, the tribulation, goes into the millennium pregnant, expecting, and delivers. And whether that's 2 minutes or 2 months or 2 weeks into the millennium, she delivers a child. Or maybe multiple couples go into the millennial kingdom as believers with the wife expecting, and then those children are going to have to make a choice. Just like we had to make a choice. Place your faith and trust in Christ. And yet, they're going to be seeing remarkable things during the millennial kingdom. As evil is greatly restrained. As sin is largely restrained because the tempter has been put into the abyss, the pit, for 1,000 years so he can no longer tempt the nations, deceive the nations. And anybody that does get out of hand, it seems to be the implication that they're going to be capital punishment, gone. But those young people are going to have to make a choice. And even in this moral society that is taking the whole world with Christ ruling in Jerusalem, and you could literally go and talk to him. There seems to be no prohibition that during that 1,000 years, you won't be able to go talk to him. Not to mention, can you imagine the other Old Testament saints that you're going to have the opportunity to visit with? And the testimonies of those who came out of the tribulation? And the testimony of people like you and me who lived during this church age? And yet, even in all of that, it looks like perhaps millions will choose not to follow Christ. And that's who Satan gathers together when he's finally released at the end of the 1,000 years to have one more rebellion, which is taken care of very quickly. And Satan is confined for all of eternity. The point I'm making is this. Even with Christ ruling and reigning, Satan bound for 1,000 years, and your ability to talk to the Lord, there's going to be millions that still choose not to follow him. What makes these people think that they can create a Christianized world that will set the right environment for Christ to come back? It's not consistent with what we even see in the reality of this country and world, much less what we see in the Bible. But people say, oh, but this millennial kingdom stuff is all made up. It's all fairly new. No, it's not. Grant Jeffrey, writing in his book, Apocalypse, the Coming Judgment of the Nations, I'm going to play the Trump clip. Even opponents of a literal millennium are forced by historical evidence to acknowledge that the early church was clearly looking for Christ to return and set up his 1,000-year kingdom. By the way, this is the first time 1,000 years is used in the Bible here in Revelation 20, and it's used 6 times. But it's allegorized by people. Why? Why would you allegorize it? John sees Satan thrown into a pit. He doesn't know how many years. He sees him being thrown into a pit, but he's told why and for how long. So he doesn't deceive the nations, and it'll be for 1,000 years. Why would you allegorize that? He was just told. Why would you allegorize the other uses of that 1,000 in Revelation 20? That's the problem. There is no purpose for allegorizing it. And most of the numbers that are used in the book of Revelation are either right away defined or defined a few verses later, like the 7 mountains or 7 hills. Or 7 kings a few verses later. But they allegorize it. And yet the early church fathers, there was a book called The Divine Institutes by Lactantius, AD 260 to 330. He taught that Christ will resurrect the rest of the Old Testament saints when he comes in glory. He wrote about those who survived Armageddon and will live as citizens in the millennial kingdom and will live by the resurrected saints of the church. And then you have Papias, P-A-P-I-A-S, a writer who lived from AD 70 to 155. He was taught by Polycarp, a student of John, who wrote the book of Revelation. He taught the same thing. Wow. More of that's at lastdaystudy.com. President Trump will come back.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com, worldviewradio.com. So, listen to that study on Revelation 20. Got about halfway through it last night, if you want to, at lastdaysstudy.com. Now, back to, before we go to President Trump, back to the article where Ed Dowd's saying, hey, we got a problem. We're going to see a deep recession that will trigger the use and the ushering in of digital currency. Dowd goes on to write that, find the article here where I left my spot, that it was that we're about to see is a combination, a hybrid of 2000 and 2008 combined, a bursting tech stock bubble paired with a collapsing housing market. He expects home building stocks to plunge 30 to 50%, a leading signal of deeper housing turmoil, while tech-driven stock valuations are unsustainable. He said, quote, if you put all your money into stocks right here, right now, your 10-year forward returns are abysmal. Noted that the Federal Reserve narrowly prevented a banking crisis in 2023 by bailing out institutions through the Bank Term Funding Program. But this time he warns credit deterioration from commercial real estate to private credit Ponzi finance may be too severe for the Fed to paper over. Regional banks could fail, paving the way for forced consolidation into mega banks. Quote, if you want to introduce a central digital currency, it's much easier to do when there are fewer banks, end quote. Of course, the banks, they're stocking up, the central banks. What are they all stocking up on, folks? Do you know? They're quietly accumulating gold to prepare for digital infrastructure, Dowd said. He sees a long-term push to remonetize gold alongside experiments in the tokenization and smart contracts. Yet the bigger picture, he warns, is 137 countries representing 98% of global GDP are already exploring CBDCs. In a global crisis, fear and panic could be weaponized to roll them out. Yep. All right, there you go. And of course, I think that's going to help usher in a system, a cashless system talked about in the Bible. So it seems like it's all coming together, right? Now, let's go to this clip by President Trump. And then we're going to open up the phone lines here pretty quick after this clip. I want to know how you feel about this. Because as I said at the introduction, I'm conflicted. President Trump says you should go to jail if you burn the American flag and are trying to spark some kind of riot or chaos. But what if it's the Quran next time? Or the LGBTQ flag? Or the ISIS flag? Or the Palestinian flag? At what point do you say, we live in a free society and people get to do stupid things? Things we even disagree with, as long as they're not physically hurting someone else or encroaching on their civil liberties. But if somebody wants to gather together and they want to burn the American flag, and no one else is physically harmed or in any way have their civil liberties curtailed, then we just have to basically say that's part of the price of admission of living in a free society. We have to be very careful. Because if this is allowed to go in during the Trump administration, well, the next thing will be someone that burns a Quran or the LGBTQ flag or the ISIS flag or anything else in protest. And pretty soon, we'll have to be careful about what we say. And now we're off to someone saying in front of some Muslims, I like bacon, and they're hauled off by the cops last week in the UK. I'd like to get your thoughts and feedback on this. I fly the American flag. I have the American flag in my residence. I have two of them. No, I have three of them. Three of them. One in the front, two in the back. I love the American flag. I love displaying the American flag. I don't like seeing it burned or desecrated or spit on or in any way disrespected. But I'm also very afraid of big government and limits on freedoms and slippery slopes. Here's what President Trump said. What are your thoughts? 1-800-347-9829. Get on board while I play the clip. 1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions. 1-800-347-9829. Here's President Trump. I think this was just today.
When you burn the American flag, it incites riots at levels that we've never seen before. People go crazy. In a way, both ways. There are some that are going crazy for doing it. There are others that are angry about them doing it. Do you want to discuss that?
Sure. So what the executive order does, sir, it charges your Department of Justice with investigating instances of flag burning, and then where there's evidence of criminal activity, where prosecution wouldn't fall afoul of the First Amendment, and instructs the Department of Justice to prosecute those who are engaged in these instances of flag burning.
And what the penalty is going to be, if you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail. No early exits, no nothing. You get 1 year in jail. If you burn a flag, you get, and what it does is incite to riot. I hope they use that language, by the way. Did they?
Yeah, incitement is.
Incite to riot. And you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail. You don't get 10 years, you don't get 1 month. You get 1 year in jail, and it goes on your record. And you will see flag burning stopping immediately, just like when I signed the Statute and Monument Act. 10 years in jail if you hurt any of our beautiful monuments. Everybody left town. They were gone. Never had a problem after that. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, wait a minute. Destruction of public property is not the same thing as burning a flag. Okay, let's make that clear. The destruction of public property and monuments is not the same as someone buying a flag and burning it. Now, again, I don't agree with it. I'm very conflicted on this one. But I just want to make sure those are not the same thing.
But this is something that's, I don't know, in a certain way, it's equally as important. Some people would say it's more important because the people in this country don't want to see our American flag burned and spit on. And by people that are, in many cases, paid agitators. They're paid by the radical left to do it.
All right, stop right there. If they're paid by the radical left and they're there to incite riots and things, then here's what we do. You go after those organizations. You go after the communist Islamic organization. Let me tell you what I think's going on here, in my opinion, whether President Trump or any of his team realize this. This is largely symbolism over substance. This is shooting at the fruit, not at the root. This is going after the bad fruit, but not after the bad root that's producing the fruit. If you don't want these anti-American, communist, Islamic, red-green, anarchist organizations doing this, then go after them. Apparently, you're going to keep a lot of IRS agents around, we reported. Why not go after these organizations and where they're getting their funding from? Iran? China? And shut them down. You're going after the fruit, not the root.
You talk to these people, they don't even know, half of them don't even know what they're doing. They say, I don't know, they gave me money to do this. I see the same things that you do. They're bad people. They're trying to destroy our nation.
Well, then you need to go after those bad people that are outside the bounds, because I guarantee you can start looking at their funding and find out, I bet, international money flowing in from countries like China and Iran.
That's not working, because I think our nation now is the most respected nation anywhere in the world by far. You saw that with the European leaders.
All right. That's the substance of it. What are your thoughts, folks? Because I'm very conflicted on this one. I don't want to see the flag burned, spit on none of this. But I'm also concerned about, as I said, the flip side. How are we starting to normalize and criminalize protests or public disagreement. I just think you got to be very, very careful. And I think the American people, President Trump's right. The American people don't want to see this. But they also don't want, it's like Tony Blair. This is in my book, The Coming Religious Reich from 2016, which you don't have to buy. All the books are at worldviewtube.com/vault as PDFs. You don't need to buy any of the books. worldviewtube.com/vault. And which, by the way, if you're a member, you'll be able to live stream the conference coming up, which, by the way, we just confirmed Byron Stinson. He is for sure coming now. Byron Stinson, the guy that got the 5 red heifers to Israel, has confirmed he will be with us in the building speaking. Quite fascinating. Quite fascinating. That's another controversial topic, but it's one we're talking about. He'll be with us. Worldviewstore.com for full details, worldviewstore.com. But Tony Blair, he wanted to put in legislation, hate crime legislation, that prosecuted people in Great Britain for denying the Holocaust. I don't like Holocaust deniers. I think that's disgusting too. But do we throw Holocaust deniers in jail? Some of the rabbis said, no, we can't do that because that's an attack on freedom of expression, freedom of speech. That's a double-edged sword. Next thing you know, they're going to now use that and say, well, we now need to go after this group and that group who say this or say that. And where's this end? 1-800-347-9829. Let's go to Bruce in South Dakota, line 3. Hi, Bruce. Thanks for calling in. What are your thoughts on this, Bruce?
Well, I'm conflicted like you are. It shouldn't happen, and we know what would happen if you were in another country burning their flag, and most of them. That don't make it right either, but and even all the hate crime laws they have now, isn't burning that considered any kind of a hate crime? I'm not for them either, but seems like they got one for everything.
They do, except for trash talking the Christians and the Christian Zionists. But I don't want laws that stop them from criticizing me or prosecute them for criticizing any of us, because I want to debate them in the arena of ideas. Let's have a debate. Let's have a debate on why you're burning the flag. Why are you burning the flag? Let's go after their arguments. Isn't that real spiritual warfare that we find out in, I think it's 1 Corinthians?
Well, yeah, and you don't go to another country and burn their flag. They don't put up with it, you know. And I guess maybe it's more up to us that we just, you know, that's not allowed. Maybe don't have to be a law against it, but, you know, make it well known that you don't do that, you know.
Well, if someone is using lighter fluid and matches in a public setting and lighting a flag on fire in a public place, I don't know, is that legal? Can you just start burning? Can you just start dousing bed sheets with lighter fluid and lighting them on fire in the public streets? I think in most places that's disorderly conduct in itself. So why can't you charge them with that? You know what I'm saying? Because you're fooling around with lighter fluid and gas and matches out in the public in an unsafe manner. Isn't that a crime? Phone line's open. We're right back. You've seen some of them on Fox News, and now some of them are coming to the Worldview weekend in Collierville, Tennessee. Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th, like Gordon Chang, an expert on China, as China is buying up a lot of our farmland and more. Then we're going to have the lead pollster of Rasmussen Polling, Mark Mitchell. Where are we headed with the midterms? What's the worldview of the average American? What values do they really believe in? And then Chris Martenson, he's an expert on the Great Reset as we head toward digital currency and social credit scores. Sidney Powell, a lot of you know who that is. Alex Newman, Dr. Andy Woods on Israel and the Middle East. And Adia Miramonde, she was inside the government and even met with people like Gaddafi. She's going to talk about the Middle East. All the details are available, and to get your tickets at worldviewstore.com. That's worldviewstore.com. Again, tell your family and friends, worldviewstore.com. All right, well, your thoughts, comments, 1-800-347-9829. 1-800-347-9829, 1-800-347-9829, or Brannon, Brannon, at worldviewtube.com. Here's an email that just came in. I agree. This is from Carl. I agree that putting someone in prison for exercising free speech is a very dangerous situation. However, the public burning of the American flag is a very serious offense. In a certain sense, the burning of the American flag is a renouncing of citizenship. I believe that consequences for such action should result in loss of voting status, arguably citizenship with the United States of America. Well, there you go. I agree. Do we want to put them in jail or say, as Carl's saying, well, you know what? If you don't like the country, we can give you a flight right out of here. Or, like Carl said, maybe you lose your right to vote. I think we got another email. Linda, flag burning never should be legalized. Excuse me, flag burning never should have been legalized. It is desecration of the country's symbol that slaps every citizen in the face. That's Linda. And see, I think it's, I always, when I saw this when I was a child and I saw this, I thought, well, of course that should be illegal. But we have to be careful because we're not dealing with the same kind of leaders and judges and politicians that we dealt with when I was a kid. They're looking for anything they can do to get us conditioned and used to losing the right to protest, free speech. I just don't want to fall for a trap that says, well, we did this, so therefore we can do this. Let's go back to the callers. Beth just said, I agree with you 100% about the flag burning. Have we not learned anything from January 6th? I can see this going bad very quickly. All right, let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Zoe in Illinois. Zoe, line 1.
Hi,
Zoe.
Brannon. I totally agree with you. When I hear about someone doing that, I feel a little sick.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think that people should have a right. If you have a flag and you burn it, it's your flag. And if you can't burn it, it's not yours. If you burn someone else's flag, that should be illegal because it was their property, not because it's a flag necessarily, but you're destroying someone else's property. And so I think it's a dangerous thing, a dangerous road to go down, and I think it makes me think of the Nazis, and I'm just very uncomfortable with it.
Well, you and I are in the same boat. I think Beth is in the same boat. We're all conflicted for the same reasons. And yet, while we want to guard the flag and honor the flag and what it stands for and symbolizes, we also don't want to lose the liberties and freedoms that it stands for. It's really kind of ironic, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you, Zoe. Let's go to Eric in New Mexico, line 2. Hi, Eric.
Hello.
Hi, Eric.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay. Right. All right. Yes. The regulations against that are a slippery slope. In no way should that be a thing. We are setting ourselves up for freedom of speech and being damaged. The one thing I think of is the cross of Christ. Well, it has no value to the unbeliever, and the only value is what the believer puts in it. Same with the flag. If it has no value for you, it's just obvious, and they're pointing themselves out, you know. And then another thing is you might just go and ask them, is there any flag that's not okay to burn? Or is there any flag that you wouldn't burn, and why? And then that's it, because they're just doing freedom of speech.
Well, you know, I like where you're going, Eric. Let's debate it. And all of a sudden, you're finding out what their worldview is, and now you can start debating their worldview. You also, though, could use this to say, as you're talking about asking questions, you know that you say this country's so horrible, but do you realize, as much as I find what you're doing disgusting, the First Amendment protects you, and the people who died, that flag also honors, died to give you the right to disagree. So are we really at such a horrible country if you are allowed to do something we find so disgusting and so unpatriotic, but yet you're allowed to do it, and you don't have to worry about being arrested because we are a free country? Now, are we really that bad? Are we perfect? No. But are we really that bad? Because look, you just got to do something that we find reprehensible and you're not being arrested. Can't you celebrate that? Isn't there anything about America that you appreciate? So I think it's kind of ironic that they're burning a flag to trash America, but it's the freedoms that people died for represented in that flag. They're giving them the rights to do it. Wow, great call, Eric. Go to Arthur in Texas, line 4. Hi, Arthur. Thank you. Hi, Arthur.
How you doing?
I'm good, Arthur.
I appreciate your show, man. You're doing a lot of good.
Thank you, sir.
But I haven't paid taxes in 30 years, and I think it's, the Treasury on down is just a scam. And
how have you not ended up in jail, Arthur?
All they do is send me letters. If you look up where the law is, you can't find it. There's no law. It's all voluntary. It's
I hear this. I hear this, Arthur. I hear it. And I know a lady, I won't say her name, but she's done it on national TV. She's a podcaster. She just said the same thing last year. Oh, I haven't paid taxes for years. I sent the IRS this letter and they never bothered me. I'm thinking, well, until of course they do bother you, knock on your door. I've known too many people that have gone to jail for it. Gone to jail for it. But I hear this all the time, Arthur. I just think you're very fortunate they haven't knocked on your door.
Well, I have, like Eric, I have the cross of Christ protecting me and guiding me. And if I paid taxes, I couldn't even eat, brother.
No, I get it, Arthur. I understand that. I understand.
Don't make that much money.
It is very, very, and it maybe that's the issue. It's just such little money, they're not coming after it. Although I have to tell you, folks, I'm going to give a disclaimer. I pay my taxes. I would encourage you. It's not a hill I'm willing to die on. I got too much important work to do. So I pay. In fact, my accountant told me this year, you overpaid. I said, good. You can get it back on next year's taxes. But I always want to pay my fair share, and we can, and maybe get a refund back if we overpaid. But I don't want to ever be, because again, they're looking for ways to entrap people like me. Maybe Arthur, they don't care, but the average American's going to have to be very careful. I wish we could have gotten to Wayne in Texas. He wanted to talk about time in jail is necessary for the flag burning. This is going to be one that goes forward. And certainly a lot of thoughts and opinions today. I'm glad you tuned in. I hope you'll tune in for Crosstalk coming up with Jim Schneider next at vcy.org. And that's our broadcast. On those stations, VCY, we're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and you here at Worldview Tube. Hey, I want to take you over real quick to worldviewstore.com. And let's see if the guys have done their job today. So they came in, I said I wanted to get this up online. Look at that, worldviewstore.com. If you go there, you're going to see a big old banner with all the smiling faces of all the speakers coming up to the conference. Or you scroll there, down a little bit, National Worldview Weekend Conference. Click on it. Now let's see if they did. Ooh, they did their job. Look at that. Guys, I want you to know what it is we're going to be talking about. This is the first time that I'm releasing the topics. Here we go. Here's the topics for this upcoming Worldview Weekend, Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. Understanding the BRICS plus banking system led by Russia and China and how they're using it to wage war on the American dollar. What will the combination of AI with robots mean for the American workforce and economy? The threat from China buying up American farmland and hacking America's critical infrastructure. Leading pollster for Rasmussen, Mark Mitchell, on the real worldview and values that are dividing Americans and how this trend is leading to a constitutional crisis between blue and red states and the federal government. The growing threat of AI data centers on America's power grid and your utility bill. Then you're going to hear the personal account from Byron Stinson, who brought the 5 red heifers to Israel from Texas, and why the ashes of a perfect red heifer are needed for the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. What was the connection between the October 7th attack in Israel and the 5 red heifers? What does the rebuilding of the Jewish temple in Israel tell us about where we are on God's calendar of end-time events? How to prepare for the coming reset of the American dollar and reevaluation of America's gold reserves. What's transhumanism and technocracy? While you better understand these growing trends being driven by America's tech bros and power elite. What's behind the worldview of merging man and machine? The rise of digital IDs, biometrics, social credit scores, and how to protect your privacy and free speech. President Trump's war on drug cartels and why he's targeting the president of Venezuela. What does it have to do with China, Russia, Iran, Hezbollah, and U.S. elections? When red and blue states redraw their congressional lines in a battle for power, what does that really tell us? And what will be the end result? How and why the collapse of American traditional institutions is the goal of America's enemies? How and why China is preparing for war with America? Inflation, tariffs, and the exploding national debt, and protecting your hard-earned savings. Why solving the immigration, border, and crime issue is imperative for saving America. The impact of America's direct and proxy wars with Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea. Why President Trump must accomplish his goal of making U.S. elections safe, secure, and accurate in the age of AI and foreign enemies targeting our elections. If the globalist worldview succeeds, what will this mean for America's children and young families? And finally, what the rising trend of aggressive, active euthanasia means for an aging population, and what it has to do with politics and economics. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like a pretty important conference to me. If you want to understand the times and know how God would have us to respond. And the tickets are available at worldviewstore.com. Or again, you can live stream it if you're a member at the 1-year rate, worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. Something else we've added on the website, the pictures and the bios of the speakers. So we've updated their bios and their pictures right there on the website. And again, these folks will all be there live in person. We have the schedule for Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. We have the restaurants we recommend. And down at the bottom, we have some of the hotels with links to the hotels. Somewhere in here, we have links to the hotels. And at least we did. Did they take those off? Let's see. I think they did. Can we get the hotels back on, guys? We got to get the hotels back on and the links to the specials because we've negotiated a special rate. Okay? So we'll get those put back up there. So all of it is at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Now, I heard from someone today that said, I don't like to register online. I don't want to put my credit card in a system. Can I call? Yes, you can call. And here's the number, 901-825-0652, 901-825-0652. Again, 901-825-0652. Leave a voicemail for Melissa or text her, and she'll help get you registered right away. A lot of people registered over the weekend. We are running spots on Fox News and Newsmax all throughout parts of Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas. So a lot of folks are seeing that and registering. And so we'd love to have you with us in person. Okay? Worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. The 22nd annual National Worldview Weekend and the concert, banquet, and keynote address by Hadith.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal